Hey guys, so I wanted to do a video where we jumped in and talked about the top 10 best designed characters in Dragon Ball Legends. I think this could actually make for some pretty interesting dialogue, and if people in the comments make some pretty interesting comments, I might go ahead and do a YouTube comment section reaction video looking at what people are saying in the comment section to this video, and I'll give my thoughts on what they're talking about. But I think before we jump into the list, it's important that we discuss what exactly constitutes good design. And I think the term character design and what makes for good character design can differ from person to person. So if you're watching this and you disagree with my list because of your personal view on what makes a character well designed, that's perfectly valid. However, for me, there are a number of factors that good design entails, and so for the purpose of this video, I'll name the 3 most important things about a character that, when considered together, I think create the overarching design of the character. Of course, there are more than just 3 factors that I think determine, if a character is well designed or not, but I think these are probably the 3 most important things. So number 1, longevity of the character's usability. AKA, will the character continue to offer value for an extended period of time? Number 2, the character has a clear purpose / role on their teams, and they're able to accomplish this goal without being too underwhelming or too overwhelming. So basically, a character comes out, you know exactly where you want to use them. It's pretty obvious where they're meant to be used, and they're not too underpowered and they're not too overpowered. Pretty much what that means there. And then number 3, I would say that this is probably one of the most important things here. There is a significant level of enjoyment from the perspectives of both the user of the character and the person fighting the character. So the character is not boring to use and not annoying to fight against, on both ends, I think. Genuinely, I think if you enjoy fighting a character and the person using the character enjoys using the character, it's a win-win. And I think with this, obviously being a game, but the purpose of a game is meant to have a good time and stuff like that. So I think that is important when we look at these characters. It's not just all about how good the character is, because if it was, this would just be a top 10 best character list of all time. That's not what this list is meant to be. So now that we have that out of the way and we've clearly defined what I consider to be the measures of good design, let's go ahead and jump into my list of the top 10 best designed characters in Dragon Ball Legends history. So coming in at number 10 on the list, we're going to go with Yellow Perfect Cell. So for those of you who have been playing the game for a while and you were around when this guy was sort of in his heyday and he was, used by pretty much every player you ran into, this is definitely one of the best aging characters in the game. I remember when this guy was months and months and months into his reign, a lot of people did consider this to be the single best aging character in the game, and I think he was the best aging character in the game for a very, very long time. But it's tough to look at this character and really look at his kit and be like, oh yeah, I can definitely tell why he was so good. Because of how old he is. This is a pre-first anniversary character. He actually released next to LF, Father-Son Kamehameha Gohan. I believe it was March of 2019 is when I think this character released. I believe it was like that Step Up banner with Gohan was 2019 March. So it was about 2 months prior to the first anniversary. But the reason why this character was so good is because he was an extremely potent offensive character while also having access to the cover rescue ability. So you had a pretty decent defensive mechanic with this character while also he was doing a lot of damage. And regen at the time also was actually pretty good. Don't forget that the Blue Slug also released on the same banner next to the Cell. Both melee regen characters actually really helped the team out a lot. Obviously, Blue and Yellow also have pretty good synergy with each other. So when Slug came out and the Cell came out together, they were obviously very meant to be used together. A very clear delineation of how this character was meant to be used. He aged very well, and I think the only knock on this character and why I decided to put him at number 10 and not higher up on the list was because his ultimate actually does have a 20% chance to faint. And so a lot of matches were hinging on whether or not you actually got that feint or not, and I don't really consider that to be very fun. You just go for the ultimate and just pray that you get the feint, because no matter what happens in that situation where there's a chance of game defining outcome to happen from one thing, one of both players are going to be upset at the outcome. So the player who is using Cell, if you get the feint, you are going to be happy, but your opponent's going to be very sad. If the feint misses, you are going to be sad, but your opponent's going to be happy. So there's always going to be one person who doesn't end up in a enjoyable position from that happening. So that's why I decided to put this guy at number 10 over the 9 other characters we're about to discuss here. So Yellow Perfect Cell number 10. Let's move on to number 9. Coming in at number 9, we have Blue Zamasu, a pretty recent character. At this point of me recording this video, this guy's only a few months old, so it's pretty nice to see them recently adding a lot of good designed characters. We'll get some more in the list as we go forward here, but I mean, there's not really much I need to say about this character at this point. You guys know how this guy works. He obviously was designed in mind to be a tank. Obviously, he's a defensive type. And his role as like a damage sponge / a healer on the future team on powerful opponent, it's definitely really good. Regen right now doesn't really exist as a team because they refuse to buff it, but I think when Regen does, eventually see a resurgence, which I hope it does soon, I think this Zamasu is probably going to be one of the first characters you decide to include on your Regen team because of how much value he brings to the table here. So this character, I think, checking off in terms of longevity, I think that might be the one weak point of this character. I think if power creep continues the way it has been, and I think we even saw this guy get a decently hard counter when Ultra Goju to Blue released, because he was like the very next character to come out after the Zamasu did. The fact that he obviously ignores endurance when he uses a Rising Rush definitely hurts this character a lot. But I'm not really going to knock him, for being weak to Goju to Blue, because pretty much every character in the game is weak to Goju to Blue. But I think this Zamasu definitely does bring a lot to the table, right? His extreme tankiness, the key reduction is massive. I think being a defensive character, it's not enough right now just to be tanky. You also have to have some disruption in your kit as well to be able to deal with a lot of these characters that are getting 3 times card draw speed and infinite key and infinite vanish back. Like, you need to have ways to stop those things from happening, or else, you can be as tanky as you want, but it's not really going to help you. So that, in combination with the healing that he provides for the team, he has a really interesting counter. The green card that he has, you can obviously force draw one with his main ability as well. I think the way that they designed it is actually really, really good, because it punishes you for using it against players who are using blast cards. It only works against tap attacks or strike cards. And I think the ability that it gives you with Cover Null is also pretty good, because it's not too long, right? It's not like it's giving you 20 counts of Cover Null. I believe it's only 5 or 10 or something like that. So you can I think it's actually 5. Let me just make sure that I'm not lying to you guys here. Yeah, 5 counts. I think that's fine, right? Because it lets you get a few cards in, and then after that, I mean, the enemy can either try to cover change you or disrupt you in some way. So I think overall this guy does bring a lot to the table. Also, he does bring the relatively new at this point, the arts card power down mechanic, which I actually do hope more characters in the future do have, because I think that's one of the ways that we can sort of curb the offensive power creep of the game here. But Blue Zamasu, I think he's overall very well designed. I'm just a little bit questioning of the longevity. How well is this guy actually going to age moving forward? If we continue to see this level of offensive power creep moving forward, I'm not really sure how well he's going to age, but as it stands right now, I think he's going to be fine. So Blue Zamasu, number 9. Let's move on to number 8. Number 8 on the list, we have free-to-play Yellow Super Saiyan Trunks. So this is, spoiler alert, this is actually going to be the only free-to-play character on the list. And I think a lot of people would not disagree with my take here that this is probably the most well-designed free-to-play character they've ever released. I mean, when I talk about the 3 factors that I think makes a good design for a character, there really might not be a better example of, the second point I mentioned, which was a character having a clear purpose / role in their team. Because if we take a look at what this Trunks' entire kit is based around doing 2 things. The first thing is to pop the main ability, get a full hand of cards, 10 counts of cover nullification, farming up your Rising Rush, doing a bunch of damage. The enemy switches while you have cover null on, you're shortening ally subcount by 2. You're getting, I guess, subcount reduction, and you're drawing more cards. And then when this character dies, you're giving a pretty sizable death buff, 20% HP to the whole team, and then 30% damage inflicted. A 30% damage inflicted non-cancelable buff for your whole team on death, like, that's a very strong effect. 30% damage on some of these really hard-hitting characters, like, that is powerful. And then don't forget, he also has the Revival Cell effect here. I guess you could also call it the LF Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta effect as well, where he shortens his own subcount by 1 every time another battle member is hit with basically any card. And the thing about this is there's actually no limit on this. Usually when we see this, there's some kind of limit on this where, you can only activate this 10 times or whatever it is. But for this Trunks, because one of his main functions is to just straight up die and give your team a buff when he's defeated, the fact that they didn't actually end up giving this guy a limitation on this effect right now, I think is really, really strong. So again, you basically switch into this Trunks, you press your main ability, you get your Dragon Balls off, you get your damage off, and then after he's, expelled the damage he's meant to do, and he's done everything he's supposed to do, you just pretty much give him up, and then that's it, right? So And it's not like this character's damage was bad either. When this character came out, he was like one of the better units in the game. This guy, honestly, at this point, what is he, a full year old now? I think we're about to hit a year, because this was the free-to-play character, I think, right before the androids came out. So this would have been either late March or early April is when this character released. So we're approaching a year since this guy came out, and I would argue you could still use this character and he would be fine, because that role that he has, it's not hard to do. Having cover null means you're pretty frequently going to be able to, you know, have this guy perform the role that he needs. And then when he dies, I mean, that's, again, a pretty sizable 30% buff there. So pretty easy character to use as a free-to-play character. And I think the main thing that I really wanted to talk about with this character is I feel like a lot of free-to-play characters are under powered on release. This game, for whatever reason, they decide that a lot of these free-to-play characters, they don't whatever deserve to be good enough, or, you know, have the ability to compete with better characters. I guess it's just because they would rather those better characters be summonable and you have to pay for them, which I guess makes sense from a business standpoint. But this Trunks is one of the few examples of a free-to-play character that actually was able to stand toe-to-toe with a lot of the stronger characters in the game. There are a few other examples of this, so the one that comes to mind is going to be the Blue Broly that came out at the end of the year, after Gogeta Blue did. Another really good example of a strong free-to-play character, but we don't really see many of those. I think a lot of the free-to-play characters, the most recent one we got was Purple Kefla, who clearly doesn't have what it takes to be usable in you know, semi-competitive environment in this game, and this Trunks for sure he did. So Yellow Super Saiyan Trunks coming in at number 8. Let's move on to number 7. Coming in at number 7 on the list, we have Blue Toppo. So on my initial, like, first iteration of the list, I actually had this character a few spots up from number 7, and I was very torn. This was not an easy list to make, but Blue Toppo was very, very good on release. This is one of the characters where, I mean, we'll see another character further up on the list in the same position as this Blue Toppo, but this Blue Toppo, pretty much his role on release, because this guy came out next to Green Jiren and Red Dispo. They were just building up the Rival Universe / Universe Survival Saga tag at the time when this character came out, and so they needed a really good foundation, you know, a really good backbone for the team to be established before they could release big characters, because guess what? The other character that came out next to this Toppo and the Pride Troopers was UI Goku, right? So the way that they decided to do this was we had an all-star banner with the Trio to Danger, right? We had Basil, Lavender, Bergamo come out. They introduced the Rival Universe. No, sorry. They introduced the Universe Survival Saga tag. We already had Rival Universe, I believe, with Vados and Champa prior to that. But now we have the Universe 9 dogs, and we have Toppo here. So Toppo, I think, was like the character that you could not go without putting on your team if you wanted to use a Universe Survival Saga / Rival Universe team. And the reason why is because this character actually did everything that you could possibly want. I'm going to go through everything he did. So we'll save the main ability for last, because I think that's the most impressive thing about this character. So this guy, he has Endurance. That's number 1. Back when in a time when Endurance was not a thing you saw on like every single character that ever released. Like, it was fairly uncommon to see Endurance. He also had direct support for, like, look at this. It was 20% damage inflicted. And on top of that, you had an additional 25% damage inflicted, specifically for Rival Universe or Blue, just because, you know, Rival Universe wasn't that expansive back then. So a really nice buff for allies whenever he got hit. You know, decent damage here. But the main thing about this character is his main ability. This, in my opinion, this might still be one of the most powerful main abilities in the entire game. He draws the Ultimate Arts card, which we'll take a look at in a second. He healed the entire team by 20%. He gave a 30% support buff to his whole team for 40 counts. And then he shortens ally sub count by 5, and he gets 50 ki. That is insane. This character is over 2 years old, and he's doing all this in his main ability. And don't forget, he draws the Ultimate Arts card that locks. This actually inflicts no switching for 3 counts. Yeah. And I think the main reason why they decided to make this guy as crazy as they did is because this was their first attempt at sort of realizing, oh, we made a massive mistake with Zenkai LF Gohan, the Red Gohan, and we got to come out with some insanely good blue character. Now, this did not deter Gohan that much. I think it did slow him down a little bit. Like, whenever you were using Gohan and you came up against this Toppo, you definitely were like, oh god, okay, got to get through Toppo now. Like, it definitely posed as like a pseudo threat to Gohan. And there were a lot of matches where me as Toppo, I was able to kill Gohan with the lock-in blue card. That's obviously the reason, or lock-in ultimate. That's some of the reason why they made it like that. But I think everything this character is doing in terms of like a foundation backbone for the Rival Universe tag was really, really good. There's not really I would change about Topo. Had him as a defensive / support type character, both like that 2-in-1 role that he had on the team, I think was basically essential for the Rival Universe team when this guy released. So number 7 is Blue Topo. Let's move on to number 6. Coming in at number 6, we have LF First Form Frieza. Now, this is actually the only Zenkai character on this list. And so I guess what I'll say is, for the purposes of, you know, how good this character's design is, he did not really gain a massive upgrade from his Zenkai Awakening. It was just to make him more modern in terms of his stats, I feel like. He does gain card draw speed with his last unique ability on his upon Zenkai Awakening, but I feel like the fundamental aspect of what made this guy good prior to his Zenkai Awakening didn't really change post Zenkai Awakening. They kind of just modernized his kit. And I feel like that's pretty much what a Zenkai should be, right? The Zenkai Awakening shouldn't make you like infinitely better than what you were when you were, you know, a new character, unless you were terrible when you came out, then sure. But this Frieza, I mean, you guys, another character that I don't think really takes a lot of thought to understand why this guy was so good. This guy pretty much encapsulated and created the base of what LOE was, and still to this day is, like, since LOE became a tag, right? LOE became a tag when Chilled came out, and it didn't really become a prominent team, I think, until this Frieza came out. And you could argue that even to this day, this guy's core on LOE. You know, the fact that he holds a blue card with how strong a lot of the blue card effects are on LOE. His green card is insanely good. He has a cover change against strike cards. His ultimate hits very hard against Saiyans. Like, he's doing a lot. He's healing. He's pretty tanky. And I think just his role on LOE has allowed the team to be good. Like, whenever we see an LOE character release and people are like, oh, this guy doesn't seem that good, or, you know, blah, 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 blah. You always have to remember in the back of your mind that this guy's presence on LOE really does change how LOE characters are going to have to be evaluated whenever they release, right? So we can see a character like Mecha Frieza. Mecha Frieza doesn't really look that impressive, right? Upon first glance. If you look at his kid, he's kind of just like, yeah, you know, he can do some stuff, but he's not, you know, he's not going to be competing with the best units in the game. But if you run Mecha Frieza next to this guy, even though it might not be the best idea because their colors overlap, but you can definitely notice a pretty significant difference in performance. Mecha Frieza next to this Frieza versus, you know, just on a team without this Frieza. So I think this guy's, again, presence on LOE definitely does boost the potential of basically every single other LOE character in the game, and I think we'll continue seeing that as we move forward. But in terms of longevity, I mean, this guy pretty much has been relevant since he released. I think even not counting the Zenkai Awakening, obviously has a very clear role and purpose on his teams, being the support character, being the character that's able to, you know, pretty tank decently well. I think you probably want to build this guy defensively. And then, you know, in terms of him being fun to fight and fun to use, I mean, he's pretty fun. I mean, I'm obviously going to be biased in this this spot because this is like my ideal character here, but this is not a character that comes to mind where it's like, oh my god, I gotta fight another First Form Frieza. Like, that's not how I really feel here. But yeah, overall, I think they did a really good job with designing this character. Let's move on to number 5. Number 5 is going to be Yellow Angel Vegeta, one of the single best designed support characters I think they've ever released. Again, I think this guy sort of takes the crown with the Yellow Trunks that we talked about earlier, the Super Saiyan Yellow Trunks, in terms of being a character that has like a super clear role on his team. This guy released alongside LF Kid Buu, and then the next release we saw after this was the Zenkai for the LF Super Saiyan 3 Goku, one of the strongest characters to release at the time. That Goku, when he came out, was in contention with Red Zenkai Gohan for being the best character in the game. And I think when you ran that Goku next to this Vegeta, I mean, this Vegeta is giving that Goku so much that I think at least it was very plausible to make the argument that Goku potentially could have eclipsed Gohan with the help of this Vegeta. That's how good this Vegeta support was. And so clearly the thought process behind designing this Vegeta was to use him with the Goku, which makes sense because they're from the exact same fight, right? That Goku is from the final fight with Kid Buu, and this Vegeta is literally there to, you know, I guess advocate for the Spirit Bomb and also buy it. Well, it's base Vegeta, so it's kind of tough to say, but this is like the Vegeta that's watching him and saying like, you are number one, right? So I mean, canonically it makes sense. But this character's doing a lot. I mean, we could take a quick look at his kit. I'm sure you guys know what he does. Let's just talk about this quickly. Main ability is incredibly powerful. It gives him type neutrality for 30 counts. It heals the whole ally team by 25%, shortens ally sub count by 5, and then it debuffs the enemy, but it's not really that important. So the sub count reduction, type neutrality, and then full team heal. Very powerful main ability for a support character. And I think even today this would be really good. Like if we saw a support character release with this exact same main ability, I wouldn't really, I wouldn't even really call it underwhelming. Like this would be perfectly fine on a modern day character. And this guy came out like, when did this guy come out? Like again, like 2 years ago or something like that. It was close to 2 years ago at this point. So what else is he doing? He is, oh yeah, the one other thing to mention that I think is probably the most important thing is he shortens allies Saiyan or Vegeta clan sub count by 1 every time when this character is hit with an enemy strike or blast card. And the reason why that was so important is because it synergized incredibly well with that Zenkai Super Saiyan 3 Goku's cover change ability where he cover rescues. You basically, if you touch this Vegeta like twice, you couldn't rush because then the Goku could just come in, right, and save you. And this was obviously during a time where cover nullification pretty much didn't exist. Like there weren't any characters really that had cover nullification except for like Vegeta Blue's ultimate. That's really the only thing that had it. So you had to be aware of that at all times. And then down here, he got some extra damage. Reducing enemy ki by 50 when changing cover was incredibly annoying, especially when he already had type neutrality. So even red characters attacking, you could very easily switch in with this Vegeta against a red character if you have the type neutrality pops, because he still reduces enemy ki by 50, and at that point, like you can't really do much to him. So the only real flaw I think design-wise for this Vegeta is the fact that he's like has an entire portion of his unique ability dedicated to him doing damage, because he wasn't really ever going to do damage anyway because he was a support character. So I think maybe they could have done a little bit better there, but a very, very good support character. I think probably one of, if not the single best support character design-wise they've ever released. So Angel Vegeta number 5. Let's move on to number 4. All right, coming in at number 4, we have the actual best support character I think they've ever released, which is this Vegeta. But wait, why does it say range type right there? Well, I don't know. I think they screwed up when they made this unit. This is probably like the only character where I think on the list, I actually feel annoyed to play against a lot of the time, but I still think he's well designed enough to warrant him being number 4 on the list here. Obviously don't see him as much anymore, but this guy definitely had an extremely long usability period. I mean, this guy came out during the 2nd anniversary. It was so the way the 2nd anniversary went is we had the initial banners with Vegeta Blue, then we had the banner with Pikkon and Super Kaioken Goku, and then we had the 3rd banner, which was this Vegeta and the red Super Saiyan Blue Goku from the Future arc. This Vegeta, when he came out, you could have easily argued that he was the best character in the game. I don't think he was better than Vegeta Blue, but funny enough, you use them both together. I mean, you use them both on Future, and Vegeta Blue pretty much couldn't lose because you just comboed forever and nothing could live. But technically, I mean, yeah, he was a ranged type character, but I mean, we could just quickly go through his kit here. So main ability, pretty similar of what we see from support characters of this time period. He gives 30% blast damage to allies for 30 counts, shortens ally sub count by 5, draws a blue card. The blue card effect is interesting because it actually gives a permanent 20% special move damage buff for your whole team, which is interesting. But I mean, obviously it can be canceled, so you can't just infinitely stack this because at some point it's going to get canceled by your enemy, right? In this day and age here. But I mean, we could take this is not too long, so we could see this. 20% damage by allies for 15 counts every time this character uses any card, pretty much, strike or blast. And then when this character switches to standby, he actually draws a new card when you go through fewer cards, and he gives 20 ki, plus he's already stacking up this damage as well. He has some decent damage, and the thing that makes this character, I think, solidifies him as like one of the best designed, I guess we'll continue calling him a support character because that's really what he is the fact that he gives a permanent 35% damage to allies, 35% on death buff. That is non-cancelable. That is very big. 35% is a lot. He's also healing Future and Vegeta Clan. And then he's reducing Dragon Balls by 3. 3 is a lot. I think, looking back at this Vegeta, I think they definitely made a mistake with the amount of Dragon Balls he destroys. I think 2 would have been just fine. The difference between 2 and 3 actually does matter a lot, I think. So again, this guy was used pretty much through the Mono Purple era, which was a full year and a half after he released. Like, people use this Vegeta on Mono Purple with the tag Blue Goku and Vegeta. That was a year and a half after he initially came out. And you could honestly make the argument that this guy could still be okay right now. Still. Over 2.5 years after he released. This character is just insane. I don't really know what they were thinking with this. I think they probably... There's a reason they don't make characters like this anymore. Like, just doing everything that he's doing with as much damage inflicted as he's giving, with this support baked into him switching out here, with the death buff that he's giving as well. Like, very similar. Like, this second unique ability is very similar to the Free Super Saiyan Trunks. Like, he has 50 timer counts of what, you know, of an offensive period where he's able to, you know, do more damage, have less cost. And then once that runs out, guess what? You just have him die. He gives death buffs and destroys Dragon Balls, and now your team is in a really good spot, right? So, yeah, number 4 on the list, the blue Vegeta from the future. Let's move on to the top 3. Okay, so we've moved into the top 3 here. And at number 3, we have LF Yellow Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta. So I have to really talk carefully about why I have this character so high up on this list of well-designed characters, because if you guys remember back to when this guy first came out, which again is now over 2 years ago, there were people who were actually disappointed with how quote-unquote underwhelming this character was on release. Like, there was a very, very vocal group of people, and by group of people, there was a large group of people that were, you know, of the opinion that this character was bad, this character was underwhelming, he wasn't as good as he should have been, etc., etc., etc. But the reason why I have this character so high up on this, you know, well-designed list is mostly because of this green card. The fact, I think if I had to label this character, you know, in like one sentence, I think I would call this probably the most carefully designed character ever, which obviously then would probably, in most instances, mean that he's one of the best designed characters ever, if he's the most carefully designed character ever. And the reason why is because there is a pretty big difference in this character whether you land this green card or not land this green card. But I mean, you know, you take a look at this character pretty much for the first entire year of his release. Like, he was exceptionally good even if you didn't land this green card, right? And I think this is probably one of the top 5, if not even maybe like top 3 characters in the game that rewards skilled play by landing this green card and punishes enemies for playing badly, right, against you. It's not always, you know, a reward for playing well. It's also a punishment for the enemy playing poorly a lot of times as well. And so I do think it's important to have characters like this in the game to be able to, I guess, teach other players how to play and, you know, what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. And it's just, you know, you get punished by this guy's green card. Well, now you know not to do whatever you just did for you know, the next time, right? And so I think, you know, that is definitely indicative of a character having a clear purpose or role on their team. I think this guy had a lot of longevity. I think I would even argue that if you're really good with this character and you could land his green card consistently, even today, over 2 years since his release, I would argue you could still use this character right now. Like, you could put him on your team and you could bring him into PvP, and you will actually see value if you are able to land this green card, you know, semi-consistently with him. And then in terms of a significant level of enjoyment from the you know, perspective of both the person using the character and the person fighting the character, there really isn't a more fun character in the game than this Gogeta, is there? If you're somebody who's actually able to land the green card semi-consistently with this character, I mean, there's not much of a more fun character to use than this guy. And if you're the person playing against this Gogeta and you get hit by this green card, I mean, I want to say 9 out of 10 times, it's probably because you played poorly. It's probably your fault that you got hit by the green card in 9 out of 10 cases. So that I really like about this character. I think he's exceptionally well designed, and definitely a character I'm excited to see how they Zenkai Awaken him down the line. But number 3 is going to be Blue Gogeta. Let's move on to number 2. I'm sure you guys knew this guy was coming up at some point on the list, and here he is at number 2. We have LF Future Gohan. Easily one of the best aging characters of all time. This character came out just a month after Blue Gogeta, which we just looked at. So that like 2-month period both yellow characters. Like little did people know these were going to be two of the best aging / designed characters the game's ever released. But I don't really think you guys need for me to explain why this character is number 2 on the list. I mean, he's still usable right now. Obviously, I think a lot of that is due to the fact that he has a pretty insane unique equipment. But the unique equipment, like him gaining just a little push, right? A little push like that unique equipment gives him was enough to make him pretty much omnipresent alongside, Beast Gohan or a lot of these future teams we're seeing with like Zamasu and Zenkai Rose and stuff like that. So I think this character is bringing enough intangibles to the table. Intangibles being support, being endurance, being vanish restoration, being cover change, the card destruction, like a lot of those utility-based functions that we don't really see a lot of other characters bring to the table. This character is able to cover those bases to make the rest of your team better and to be able to buy time, etc. And for those reasons, I think this character, will continue to be pretty good moving forward. I think, we're definitely entering the territory where power creep will eventually start to take a heavy toll on this character. I mean, his damage is really bad, but you're not really bringing him for damage most cases. I mean, on a hybrid team, like a full pure hybrid team, this character I think can still do pretty decent damage, but it's definitely not as good as like a lot of other options you could include on your team. But yeah, this guy, I mean, you guys know how good he is. I think the reason why I don't have this character at number 1, because I think a lot of people probably would place this character as number 1, is if we take a look at the third point that I made before we started, which was the enjoyment factor of this character. I think there's 2 things that are pretty annoying for a lot of people when they fight this character. Number 1 is going to be the cover change. The fact that it works the way it does, where it's like if you have no vanish and you blast card this character, you pretty much can't do anything about it and you just get comboed. And just also the fact that the card destruction, but the card destruction is less of an issue, I think, just because like card destruction is moving forward going to be an essential part of the game. I think if we see more characters coming out with card destruction, that's going to be the main way to disrupt combos, as we see characters with like triple card recipe come out and stuff like that. But the second reason is because of the ceiling, the card ceiling. I actually don't think card ceiling should exist in the game as a mechanic. I think restricting people to be able to play the game, by not even being able to click arts cards, like for all you like this character presses his main ability and he's sealing, like is it strikes or blasts? It's one of the 2. Oh yes, but okay, no, it's not that. It's I think his blue card seals strikes, right? Yeah, his blue card seals strikes for 5 counts, and then his main ability seals special moves and special, so blue and green cards for 10 counts. Like I've been in situations like this before facing this character where he can literally seal your entire hand. Like what are you supposed to do? Like I think that's very stupid. I don't like that at all. I think again, I'm of the opinion. I don't think many people agree with me with this, but I'm of the opinion that locking cards shouldn't be in the game at all. But yeah, that's really the only thing. I know a lot of people don't enjoy fighting this character, and so that's why I have him at 2. But in terms of like longevity and how good he was and his purpose, and like all that was A+ tier for this character. Just one of the best designed characters we've ever seen. And I think if they continue making characters like this moving forward, the game will be in a pretty interesting spot. So yeah, Future Gohan at number 2. Before we move on to number 1, let's take a look at an honorable mention. I'm going to bring Vados up as my honorable mention here before we jump into the number 1 slot on the list, because I know I'm going to scroll down into the comment section and there was going to be like 50 comments asking where's Green Vados. So I think this character is exceptionally good. I think obviously when she came out, she was basically a must use on any sort of God Key setup at all. Rival Universe, any of those teams, you had to include this character because she was just too good. So I think, in terms of her longevity, she definitely existed for a long time. In terms of her, purpose or role in the team, she was like one of the best support characters of all time, if not the single best support character. Like her, the purple Vegeta and the yellow Vegeta we took a look at on the list that I made, I think are probably the 3 best support characters we've ever seen. And then Red Pan is up there as well. Red Pan would probably be in that mix, from 1 to 3, somewhere in there probably, in terms of like the game's historical best support characters. And this character actually does have a lot of parallels to the Red Pan that we see right now. The reason why I don't have Red Pan as my honorable mention or in the list at all is just because I feel like she's way, way too annoying to fight against. And that is a big factor for me. I think they just made her like the key reduction and then the key recovery down, the speed at which she gains Dragon Balls. Like it's just, I don't really enjoy fighting that, and then it's just, yeah, it spirals out of control, especially when she came out next to Beast Gohan, and she's like the main battery that makes Beast Gohan as good as he is. So I didn't put her in the list because of that reason. And I think Vados fits in a similar spot as Pan, except to less of an extreme degree. The thing that makes this Vados annoying to fight, or made her annoying to fight when she came out, was number one, she actually destroyed 2 cards on cover change. Where is that in her kit here? Yeah, destroys 2 enemy cards when changing cover. Back when this character came out, this, like, every single character that released didn't even have level 1 card draw speed. So if you're comboing and you don't have level 1 card draw speed, and this character comes in and cover changes and destroys 2 of your cards, like, that's pretty much the end of your combo, period. There's not much you could do about it. Unless you had, like, a main ability that restored your hand or something like that. There wasn't really much you could do about her destroying 2 cards. And then she switched and the whole team was healed. But the main reason why she was super annoying to fight, in my opinion, was because of this green card. The fact that she reduced your ki by 40 and then basically gave you 100% to, minus 100% to ki recovery for 5 timer counts. This is what I think is a major similarity between this character and Red Pan, except nowadays you have characters that, you know, don't really care as much about this sort of effect as you did back when this character released. This was a very, very annoying character to fight back in the day. I would argue Red Pan is probably more annoying than this character, but this character was annoying to fight. But this character was insane. She provided so much damage to your God Ki team, your Rival Universe team. She was healing. She was doing everything you needed for her, for your team, for your team to perform well. The only downside is that she was super, super squishy. She had like almost no defense at all. I don't even think did she have any damage reduction at all in her kit? She actually had 0. She has no reduced damage received. 0. Right? And that was sort of their way of compensating for how much damage she was giving to the rest of the team and the healing and all that other stuff. So this character was very well designed, I think. She would be number 11 on my list, I think. But just the fact that she had those annoying features about her kit means that the person fighting her didn't always have a very good time. And I definitely felt that way when I fought her a lot of the time. So I'd have right number 11 here. But yeah, honorable mention, Vados. Let's go ahead and jump into the number 1 spot on the list. Coming in at number 1 on the best designed characters in Dragon Ball Legends history list is going to be LF Android 17, a character that came out just 1 month ago, the first LF release of 2023. I was very surprised and very pleased to see the way that they designed this character. I feel like the way that they made this character sort of like the introduction of the Universe Reps tag. Like, this is definitely the way you want to establish a foundation for a new tag, right? Universe Reps was introduced with this character. I actually feel like there's a lot of similarities between this character and Blue Topo, right? Because Blue Topo, again, was a foundation character for the Rival Universe team. And now this 17 is a foundation character for the Universe Reps team. And we've seen Universe Reps get fleshed out since this guy's release. And I mean, you take a look at what character are you running no matter what? It's this character. No matter what your composition on Universe Reps is, you are always keeping this character constant. You're always going to be running this character no matter what other characters you're running next to him. Like, this character is just such a good backbone for pretty much any team. And I remember even making a point about 17 before he came out, before we saw his details. It was just that the way this character becomes relevant moving forward, even past, Universe Reps being a good team, good competitive team, is you make this character a monster in the leader slot, so that down the line, if let's say Future gets a massive buff, let's say I don't know, like some really obscure team like Girls or OG Dragon Ball, becomes somewhat usable, guess who the first option for your leader slot is going to be on pretty much any team? It's going to be this 17. He just brings so much to the table. Like, the fact that he's healing the whole team every time the enemy uses a blue card, every time the enemy uses an ultimate. He's the first character in the game to have an anti-endurance, I guess the best way to say this is an anti-endurance mechanic, right? So if the enemy uses, like, let's say an ultimate that, is supposed to nullify endurance, this 17 actually removes that attribute upgrade from the opponent before it hits him, so he actually nullifies the endurance nullification. His unique gauge is insanely good. The fact that this guy has 2 vanishes when you fill up his unique gauge, like, there's not really much like that in the game that we see from other characters. Like, this character, that combined with the arts card power down when the enemy uses, blue cards and removing the buffs, like, I don't really see an argument for a different character that would overtake this guy in terms of being well designed. Like, he's allowing you to play the game when a character named Ultra Gogeta Blue pretty much doesn't allow you to play the game in most cases. Like, this is the only character that can really go toe-to-toe with him. And I think as we move forward, I even made the same statement back before we even saw his full kit, but like, this character is poised to be the best second character on every single team for a very long time. Again, you just chuck him on your leader slot. He is, reducing sub count with his green card. He's getting covered all with his main ability and green card when you have a full unique gauge, basically a permanent double vanishing gauge, assuming that you have your gauge built up. Just a really strong character. It's gonna be really hard to top this guy in terms of design specifically, but yeah, I'm absolutely in love with the way that they designed this character. I think he's gonna age really, really well, and I don't know. There's not really much I need to say about him. I think he's pretty much the perfect design character. I don't really see any flaws with his kit at all. None. The only criticism I guess you could have is maybe make his unique gauge take a little bit shorter to build up. That was the initial thought that I had, like, the first time I used him, was, okay, his unique gauge takes a little bit too long to get, which I think, might still be the case, but you have to understand how powerful it is. You're getting an extra vanishing gauge from filling up his unique gauge. It's actually ridiculous. But yeah, number 1 on the list is going to be LF17. And just to go through the list one more time, the honorable mention was Green Vados. Number 10 was Yellow Perfect Cell. Number 9 was Blue Zamasu. Number 8 was Yellow Super Saiyan Future Trunks, the free one. Number 7 was Blue Topo. Number 6 was LF First Form Frieza. Number 5 was Yellow Angel Vegeta. Number 4 was Purple Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta. Number 3 was LF Gogeta Blue. Number 2 was LF Future Gohan. And number 1 was LF17. Let me know down below what you guys think of this list. I want to also ask, what do you guys consider to be good design? I'm curious, but hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys all in the next one.